mental health professional and owner of Bay Counselling. Darren Cox is our very special guest today, Thursday, October 5th, 2023. Darren, who in a recent survey conducted by DrydenWire.com was chosen as the greatest human being on the planet. It should be noted that only one person participated in the survey, identified only by the initials RG. Hey, before we get our chat with Darren, for DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden, and you're watching DrydenWire Live, presented by Americans for Prosperity Wisconsin. AFP Wisconsin works to reignite the American dream and break down government barriers that hold us back from our full potential. Learn more at americansforprosperity.org and join AFP to fight for more freedom for all Wisconsinites. Hey, Darren, good morning. Thanks for coming on. How are you?
I'm doing well. I think that was probably payback for when I referenced you as a beautiful human being in a prior interview, so I probably had it coming. Oh boy, this is now a dumpster fire, so we'll just get it out of the way and light a match, right?
Yeah, and honestly, I don't know how well this is going to even go today. I mean, if technically speaking, because we've been having internet issues all week. Hopefully it doesn't drop. If it does, man, we're just going to stop it and just, I don't know what we're going to do. But just keep logging back in, and it never getting fixed probably isn't the way to go. So, hey, this could be a quick 5-minute chat. Or it could, usually go our 45 minutes long. Right after this, I have another show. So hopefully this works, man. Hopefully I got it fixed. But who knows?
Right.
So,
we'll wing it.
Well, I have literally nothing written down to talk about, which I always like to have a couple of topics. And if people, that know you, know that you like to be a little prepared for things. And I said, don't. So we're both a little out of our comfort zone right now. I got technical issues to work on, etc. So, hey, what do you want to talk about?
I don't know. I was thinking, potpourri for 500, Alex. I mean, that sounds like a great place to start. I mean,
potpourri.
Obviously you didn't have, me on to, talk politics. You had...
Sure, we could talk about anything.
You had Romaine Quinn on, last time I watched, and what I appreciated about that interview was just the candor. It wasn't political speak. It was just candor. It was just popcorn. And so
with Romaine, I like him.
Absolutely. Yeah,
I like him.
Yeah, that was a fun interview, and Fitzy's the same way. So
yeah. Good morning, Renee. You know what? You know where we should probably start. For the people who don't know you, and again, you have been on before. You actually do some guest columns on DrydenWire.com. Yep. But just a quick bio for people who don't know Darren. Darren, tell us about Darren.
Well, let me give you a little background here. So the first interview I did with Mr. Dryden here, him and his wife counted how many times I used his name.
I don't know if you've counted, but I'm up to like 9.
Yeah, no. So there's a little contest going on here with how many times you can, again, pay me back. So, no, we've been in Spooner since 2004. Not too long after I completed grad school, moved to this area, and I've been doing outpatient mental health therapy ever since.
Now, who's we?
So we being Heather, my wife of 25 years, and my 3 now adult children, Katie, Kayla, and Cody. So we are transplants to this area. So yeah, that's the we. Heather is the principal, the elementary principal over in Shell Lake, and all 3 kids are in college. So
empty nesters now.
We are absolutely. So looking to donate a kidney, plasma, anything else that I can do for funding college. So yeah.
Is this the first year? Well, we're in October. Is it the first year? I mean, when did your youngest move out or go to college?
Yeah, he actually moved out in August. He's at Northwestern in St. Paul.
Sure.
Yeah, and he was gone all summer at camp anyway, so we kind of had to peel the Band-Aid quick. He left right after, graduation ceremony. So
yeah,
we're kind of on the backside of it now, which is good. I like my kids. They're my friends. They're your entertainment. They're kind of what you build your life around, and then you wake up one day and your house is empty. And I'm like, boy, I'm glad I still enjoy my wife, or this would be really difficult.
Right.
So,
maybe more importantly, I'm glad that she still enjoys you.
Well, you'd have to ask her about that one. I can't speak for her.
Oh, we should have done that. We should have had her on as well, like a surprise guest.
Before, you should have her on as a guest, So.
All right. No, we will. So Anchor Bay is what you're talking about. That's your business. Mm-hmm. Anchor Bay Counselling. You have I think since the last time you were on, I can't remember. I don't think you had another location back then. It was just in Spooner, but you have another location now too in Ladysmith.
Yeah, we added Ladysmith about 2 years ago. There was a couple of colleagues of mine that I worked with prior at a different agency who decided they kind of wanted to go out on their own, and it worked well to get under the umbrella of the established insurance contracts that we already had. And boy, they've just really done well over there. They're well respected,
Aw.
and just do a really nice job in that community for Russ County. And it's really tough to find openings for mental health services. So to be able to add another office was, I think, a good thing. So.
You mean for the average person? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've never seen the demand for mental health services like we're seeing now. And day in and day out, we're having to turn people away. And I hate doing that because I didn't get into this field to be able to, to say no, that I can't help, but there literally just isn't the amount of providers for the amount of demand right now. And that's consistent between all agencies in our area. We're all in the same boat. But it just kind of reflective of, where things are at right now from a mental health standpoint.
Well, Darren, you know what we should do? We should have done this and preface this with it should be like Dr. Fraser Crane on Frasier, where he does that radio show and people call in and, with any of their questions, concerns, etc. Like Dear Abby or something. I don't know. So, hey, if anyone's actually watching this live, I can't see. We're having some technical issues, but literally put in any question. And it'd be even better if it wasn't a question about your life. Now, if it is about your life, fine. But it'd be funnier if you have a question for a mental health professional, a therapist question. I have one. You had just mentioned about you don't like turning people away. Have you ever actually had someone come in and obviously without details, said, I don't think I can. Like after one session, I don't think I can. I'm sure this happens in your field. Have you had that happen to you? And I don't know, how does that work for you?
Well, what I tell people at the initial session is that, your ability to connect with the therapist is what determines outcome. And sometimes you just get personalities that don't line up. It does happen. You try not to take it personally. But that's really one of the things where we're looking for. Now, after one session, it's a little tough to get a read. And I always try to take the approach of, can I maintain what we call unconditional positive regard? That I'm going to see the good in this person, no matter how annoying, how smelly, what they're happy, whatever it might be that might be tough to give them, positive vibes. We try to maintain that and really, see the best in people. So, but yeah, there have been people, it's like, this just isn't a good fit, and let me find you a referral. And fortunately, we got a network of people that I've worked with that I know, hey, this might be a better fit, and we get them moved.
So like pastors in churches, they go to talk to other pastors because they need, everyone goes to them for problems, or not problems, but a lot of people go to pastors in the church for various reasons, and that's got to be heavy on them, right? So your whole job is to listen. Well, I shouldn't tell you what your job is, but you do listen all day long for people and the issues and the struggles, and you try to help them, etc. That's got to wear on you a little bit. What's the trick to that? How do you do that? And then also, do you actually go and see someone to kind of get your stuff off?
Well, what's funny is when I first started in this field, I would take it home, and where I would see it is in sleep. So I would wake up in the middle of the night and I'd be doing therapy in my sleep. I'd be having a conversation with somebody that, from earlier in the day. And, like when you're kind of half in and half out, you're kind of awake, but you're not really.
Yep.
And I'm realizing I'm doing therapy in my pajamas. This is unethical. I'm going to get fired, and then I'd kind of snap out of it and be like, oh thank you. It's just a dream, it's not real.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just takes time to be able to get, used to the stories that you hear. But I'm pretty intentional when it comes to taking care of myself because I have to. So, how I offload things is outdoor activities, physical exercise, walks with my wife. We walk quite a bit in the evening, and, those are times to just kind of, offload and process through things.
Yeah.
Maintaining a spiritual perspective, trying to see things through, God's eyes rather than my own eyes of, brokenness and the, struggles of humanity. But, I feel fortunate that I don't wear it. And when I do reach the point where, I am burdened by it, and that's what vacations are for. That's when it's time to kind of step away and regroup. So you kind of got to be self-aware, because nobody wants to see a frustrated therapist. If you remember the Hartman episode where it was just stop it. You ever see that?
The what episode?
Remember Phil Hartman?
Oh, yes, Phil Hartman, yes. Oh,
Yeah, so
Saturday Night
he
Live
plays
you're
a
talking about.
psychiatrist. Right, he plays a psychiatrist,
That's
and this
right.
lady walks into his office, and he hits the stopwatch and says, "All right, you got 5 minutes." And she lays out his problems, and he says, "All right, I'm going to change your life. A couple simple words. Just stop it." That was his input to her as a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
Just stop it.
Yeah.
So you can't do that and expect that you're going to be successful and people are going to come up, back and see you.
Yeah.
So when I get short and I get frustrated, which I do, I'm human. That's when it's time to just take a break and refuel the batteries on the things that feed your soul.
Yeah.
It's different things for different people, but yeah, that's how I manage that. So
Well, you've brought up the spirit and faith a little bit. What role does that play in this? Are you what would it be called? A Christian therapist? How the secular world may define you as? Are you that? Is it? No, there's two different things. Like Brian Cole, he'll go to schools and talk about with kids about meth and addiction and all that. But then he also is a pastor. Now, he doesn't mix those two together typically, right? He goes to the school and he talks to the kids about, addictions and drugs and whatever. Do those bleed into each other kind of, or do you always keep those separate?
Well, we see people from a wide range of walks of life. And I'm not here to proselytize. I mean, I'm not going to beat somebody up with, a Bible by any means. But that's also the frame of reference with how I look at people and how I look at life is from a biblical standpoint. So when someone asks me that question, I'm not a therapist who happens to be a Christian. I'm a follower of Jesus that happens to do therapy for a living. And to me, there's a different way of looking at that. But it does provide my frame of reference. Now, again, I'm not here to proselytize, but if somebody asks, I'll openly answer that question. But lots of people will come in here with, having no background of faith, and we just meet them where they're at and go from there.
Right. So do you, in those scenarios, so if it's a person of faith, oh, and Heather, thank you. You have a question. We'll get to that in just a second here. If somebody comes in and they are a believer, or we'll say just a Christian, average, Joe or Jane Christian, versus someone who is anything, an atheist or agnostic or just none of that stuff at all. How does that change how you talk? Let's say they're the identical people, the identical issues. One is a faith-based person, one isn't. How does that change how you, I don't know what it's called, how you do your job and provide them counsel?
Yeah, I'll couch my words a little better because I don't want to offend. I don't want to.
Oh, come on. It's a live show. All right, fine.
So, I don't have to attach scripture and verse reference to be biblical in my orientation. Okay. And what I mean by that is that I don't have to, just grab a specific verse and share that specific verse, every time with what it is that we're talking about. So I'm very aware of where people are at, and usually somebody from an atheistic or agnostic standpoint doesn't want to hear those types of things.
Well, that's what I mean. Right. They totally wouldn't, and they wouldn't want to be there. It's like, what?
And we respect that. It's okay. There are ways that we can help without having to go, down a road that's going to create discomfort for them. So it's a balancing act, that I've had to learn over time. And I'm sure I've said things where people are like, yeah, too religious for me. And that's okay. I have to, make those adjustments as we go. But when somebody comes in who's open to things of faith, then obviously we get more directive and more specific with the interventions that we use.
Yeah, because seriously, if you're a quote unquote Christian therapist or have a faith-based counseling, I could do that job. Come on. Just walk in and just, here's the thing. You need Jesus. Here's a Bible. Now get out of here. And, leave your check.
Right. And again, it's probably not the best therapy, you know, to be able to
Yeah.
do that to get people to come back in. So,
All right, whatever. Okay, so
you know,
here's a question from Heather. What do you think is the hardest thing people are facing or fighting today? I believe that'd be a question for you.
no, actually, I'm sure that's directed towards you,
No,
Ben.
no.
So,
Hardest thing people are facing or fighting today. Oh, I could answer that all day, but I believe she means it from your profession.
yeah, I think there's a lack of hope that things are going to get better.
Hmm.
You know, we can return to a time where you could trust people. You could let your kids play outside with, you know, out fear what the neighbors are like. Um, you know, this society that we're in is it's fear producing. There's a lot of things, you know, it's like the old Dirty Laundry song by Don Henley, you know, with all the things that are in our 24-hour news cycle. You remember that song, Dirty Laundry? Kick them when they're up,
Oh,
kick them when
yes,
they're
yes,
down,
I do. Yes, I do.
kick them all around. Yeah. Okay. So with the 24-hour news cycle, we're fed this constant barrage of bad news, and it robs people of hope. It robs people of their ability to think that they can pass something down to the next generation that's better than what they have experienced themselves. Um,
As a
so it's
reminder,
more,
if anyone is looking for those types of news, you can go to DrydenWire.com. Say, nice plug. I appreciate that. I know where you're going with it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it is true that the number one thing read on your website is the booking reports, right?
Yeah, I know, and I'm not kidding. I cannot remember the last time I looked at one because I don't care. It literally has no impact on my business. I can't look at a booking report, see someone that is arrested, and do a story on it.
Yeah.
I have to wait until it goes through, on CCAP, a criminal charge, because not everybody gets arrested. Actually, it leads to something. So I don't even read them because I don't care. I post them, but cheapers. People love that. They want to know who's arrested, who died in a crash, and who just died. Like our obituaries page is our second most viewed page.
Yeah.
It's really weird,
Yeah.
but I always look at those crime and court stories. By the way, not the booking reports, but I look at those as success stories. I actually look at that as positive, not a negative, because that means these people already existed. It's not like the cops made it up. These people exist. I like seeing that stuff. Let's get them off the streets. Let's get
Yeah.
them arrested and charged. Not necessarily even for punishment, but also, I mean, listen, when cops get involved, and I'm sure you're very well aware, it's usually at one of the lowest points of your life. And we're all human. I'm going to do something dumb someday. I'm probably going to be on a booking report at some point. I'm sure of it. But I'm not going to block it out. I mean, hey, I'm going to own it. But that would mean I'm at a really bad place in my life. And that was there's consequences to those decisions or my decisions. So I understand that part. So a lot of it I look as this is an opportunity for you to fix it.
Yeah.
As Hart, as he said on Saturday Night Live, just fix it. So I kind of look at those as positives, but I'm also, defending my own media outlet. Social media, does that ever come up in sessions with people at any age? You were talked about hope and the hopelessness, this feeling in our society right now. Does social media play a bigger role in that? I'm sure as a mental health professional, you have to look at studies all the time. Like doctors are always reading up on the latest things and the next things. How much of an impact is social media having on people?
Well, if you look at the last, 5 or so years, there is less and less decorum with how people communicate to each other. You get the keyboard cowboys with social media, people that would never say things face to face to a person that will absolutely do that, via a social media platform. Now, I'll admit I have a really limited social media,
Presence,
yeah,
knowledge,
exactly. So my
sure.
Facebook account is my wife's. I've hijacked that for my business. I don't have Instagram. I don't have Snapchat. I don't do any of that stuff. I haven't had a Facebook account since I don't know, early mid 2000s. So it's kind of a wrong person to ask that question there. But what we see is um, this constant stimulation, this constant awareness of what's going on around you. People don't turn their minds off anymore. People don't enter a state of rest to be able to unplug that. And we particularly see that with kids. And the implications of that, I think we're going to look, 15, 20 years down the road and be able to see how some of these things that we're seeing in society, whether it's, lack of impulse control, addiction, crime related issues, are kind of tied to some of the things that we do day in and day out right now. And that includes what we expose ourselves to through social media.
Sure.
Uh, so,
I've read a lot of studies, not a lot. I've read several studies that have come through our emails from, I don't know who sends these things, uh, regarding pornography and how that is impacting marriages, how it's impacting men's ability to, I think we can kind of, figure the rest out there. Is this at any point, I mean, is it gotten to the point now where this is having a big impact on a lot of people, more than people realize, and it's just one of those things that nobody wants to talk about? Or, yeah, not really. I don't really see that being like one of our bigger issues specifically for men, we'll just say. It's not that big of an issue because there's like 10 others that are, on the list way before it. Is this a big issue? The access to it anywhere you want on a phone, it's all free. I mean, I'm just saying, is this a concern for you from a mental health professional standpoint, where we are with the unfettered access to adult entertainment, I think it's technically called, but porn?
well, it's a concern for me as a parent. It's a concern for me as you know, a member of our, community because of what it's normalized, and what our
Normal.
kids have access to. So, one of the things that we always try to stress with parents is that if you can delay exposure with your kids to, illicit material, whether that's, smoking, drinking, drugs, sexual material, those types of things, if you can delay exposure to that, usually the outcomes are much better. But when you awaken that, when you expose children at earlier and early ages, this is when you really start to see, some pathology. This is when you see things really start to take root. And that's what my concern is with what I see our children exposed to. It used to be when, I was growing up, unless you found a magazine, you just didn't have access to it.
Right. Yep. 100%.
Your buddy's porn, his dad's porn stash or something, if you, came across it.
Everybody had a friend that had a dad
Right.
that it just, everybody did.
Yep. Yep. So, and it's not that case anymore. So, that is concerning because we are seeing society change when it comes to what are considered healthy, normal sexual boundaries. And when those boundaries get blurred, our kids get impacted.
So do you
So,
see a lot of this, or does that tie into? Well, I don't want to get too far into the people that you see, but are you seeing more of that in terms of studies, the things that you research? That, hey, therapists, be aware of this, and this. Is it getting more and more? Is it no? It's pretty much the same.
no, it's continuing to grow.
Okay,
It's the thing about, sexual appetites is they're insatiable. That's why you see people get addicted to it, because you need more and more and more to be able to produce the same effect.
sure, sure.
So
I
yeah, this problem isn't going away anytime soon,
Yeah, I
for
always think of
sure.
like that Pirates of the Caribbean movie when the not bad guys, I can't remember who they were, the ones that were just alive all the time, and he comes out of the shadow, and then you can see in the sunlight that he was just a skeleton, and he's drinking wine, and it's going, just pouring out of him because there's nowhere for it to go. It's like that, right? It's just, it doesn't satisfy you.
No, no, it's an insatiable, appetite, and it's, pornography is no different than any other,
Well, right, yeah,
addiction that we have, where people use it to numb out pain. And what I'll tell people is, look, you can either numb out, you can check out, or you can figure it out. And my role with you is to help you figure it out. But the, the numbing of pain is one of the primary motivators of life. And we can either do that we can address pain in healthy ways, from a, maintaining a healthy perspective on why bad things happen, or we can seek to numb it out.
hmm
And numbing it out is oftentimes what gets, people into my office, because now it's impacting your relationships, it's impacting your work.
sure.
So it's like, I read a statistic the other day that there's 7 million men between the ages of 24 and 52 that aren't in the workforce right now. They're voluntarily choosing not to be in the workforce right now.
Seems
So
high.
Yeah, so it makes me beg the question: what has happened to this person's, their dreams, their hopes, their aspirations, their desires for their own future, where they're just resigned to sit in their grandma's basement, smoking dope, playing video games, and watching porn all day long. So, what happened? How did we get to that point?
Yeah. So we have a couple of things here. One from Heather, and good morning, Tammy. We'll get to you in a second. How can we help our communities feel there is hope? Going back to what we were talking about earlier, our kiddos are living in a wild new world, I believe, is what that
In
is.
a whole new world.
Yeah.
Well,
So how
tied
can we
into
help our
that is,
communities feel there is hope?
yeah, we used to do a better job of drawing our young people out and into society by calling attention to their gifts, their abilities, affirming them, and saying, "We have a place for you. We have a need for you. Use this gift that you have, this skill, this ability," and making them feel like they can make a difference. So our kids are born in this generation at this time to be able to make an impact. It's not an accident, and it's not a oops, boy, I hope they get through it. So how do we equip our kids to be able to be in the world but not influenced by the world at the same time, to be in it but not of it? So this is really where your parenting comes into play, and parenting is a full-time job. That's not something that you can do part-time and expect that you're going to influence your kids. So with our kids living in this world, how am I equipping them? What type of resiliency am I building with them? How much am I promoting their character versus their comfort? If I'm focused on comfort, then I'm not building resiliency. But if
Uh,
I'm focused on character, we'll use hardship to kind of build that. So
could you
we have to
actually,
build.
before you get into that further, I know I'm going to forget. Could you go into that a little bit more? Character versus comfort. Give an example.
So Johnny gets in trouble at school because he cuts in front of the line at somebody, and they get in an argument, and he punches him in the face. So if I'm focused on his character, then I'm going to let the consequences speak. I'm going to let, if he's got a suspension, he's earned it. I'm going to let him have to deal with that on his own. If I'm interested in his comfort, then I'm going to look for somebody to blame as his parent. I'm going to say he's been, the other kid did this first. He's being bullied. He's being targeted. We're not going to, look at the fact that Johnny made a poor choice and punched Jimmy in the face. So that's what I mean with character versus comfort. And what's interesting is earlier you talked about consequences, okay, with law enforcement, that law enforcement is doing their job getting these people off the street. And I think what we're seeing is that, some of these bigger cities, there's no fear of consequence. And that's why you're seeing the behaviors that you are. The kid that ran over that retired investigator on his bike, when he videoed it, he jokingly said to the arresting officer, "I'll be out of here in half an hour." There was no fear of consequence. And confrontation doesn't change behavior. Consequences do. That's never going to
Oh,
change.
say that again. I want to write that one down.
Sure. Confrontation does not change behaviors. Consequences do.
What am I writing this down for? I can just go back and listen to it. Duh. That's stupid.
Well, it's like you can tell me the stove was hot all you want to. But until I burn myself, the consequence, I'm not going to realize it. And we've gotten away from consequences. Now, they need to be just. They need to be appropriate. Their restorative justice is an important component here. I get that. I'm not talking about going back to the Wild West.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm, seeing happening.
Tammy, we'll get to your question in a second. I want to quick ask you, Darren. So I've always been, or here at our house, as we parent, I have talked to the kids about that I prefer to reward, and we will reward good behaviors rather than punish bad behaviors. Mm-hmm. But there's going to be times where we're going to have to. There's consequences to your decisions, not mistakes, because unless you accidentally fall down and punch someone in the face or something, I mean, that's a mistake. But I'd much prefer to reward good behaviors. Is that healthy for us to do? Is that something that you're like, well, I mean, I can't really diagnose this over over a live show. I'd have to know your kids and your wife and all that stuff. But is that a strategy or an approach we feel like it's a good one? Is there a danger in this, or maybe we go too far with that, rewarding those good behaviors? By that I mean, if you get A's and B's in school, then you can have your cell phones. As long as you're getting A's and B's, then you get them until 8 o'clock at night when you get home, right? So from like 5 to 8. As soon as those you get a C, now you lose it for the semester. So it's not a punishment right now. It's as long as you keep getting good grades, I'm rewarding a good behavior. Is that good, or maybe we should not do that?
Well, it sounds like child-centered parenting, okay? And what I
Okay.
mean by that is, there's a proverb that talks about training up a child in the way he should go, okay? Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart. That's how the proverb goes. And literally, to train up a child in the way he should go means according to what their natural bend is. How is this child wired? All right. How are they, geared? So some kids, I mean, two of my three, all I had to look at was cross-eyed, and they'd snap right back into line. I didn't need consequences. So that's the type of child that you would reward positive behavior. So to continue to get that. Now, another one of the kids, you look at them cross-eyed and they're like, "What's wrong with your face?"
Right,
So
right. I
it
get
took
it.
a little, it took a little more, consequence to drive that home. So with
Understood.
your children, you're tailoring your parenting to fit their personality because you don't want to break their spirit. And that's, my generation, it was the woodshed justice. I mean, when you were in trouble, you knew it. I mean, it's just that's how it was.
Yeah.
And what happened is the pendulum swung from that really heavy-handed discipline to now parents are trying to be the friend of their kids. When there is no discipline, there is no instruction or consequence, there's just enablement. So that can be, to your question, Ben, very effective parenting for the right child.
That's interesting. And that was very helpful. See, we should just do this every week. Ask questions like this.
There you
Because
go.
that's what we use for both, well, the two youngest that are still here, Kenneth and Riley, but they're two completely different people.
Hmm.
And I can actually now see how that would actually, one would really respond and the other maybe not as much, maybe a different approach. All right, so here's a question from Tammy Hopke. Good morning, Tammy. Well, I haven't talked to Tammy in forever. Is there such a thing as grieving for family are one, when you are the one passing? Makes sense? What do you recommend to help the family and the person that is passing to be able to cope and find some peace?
Here's what comes into my mind. Love that person like your hair is on fire. If you've got a short amount of time, make the most of it. Talk about the things that you've shared as a family, the laughs, the loves, the hurts, the tears, but literally love like your hair is on fire. Because when you reach the end where the loved one passes, you can't go back, you can't undo things, you can't say, man, I wish I'd have said X, Y, or Z. So I encourage people, empty the bucket of what needs to be said. Leave
Mm.
no doubt with how you feel about that person, the place that they have in your heart. In the coping piece, how do you help them cope to be able to find some peace? The hardest part about grief,
Mm.
from a clinical standpoint, is there's very little that I can do to make somebody feel better. I can't take away the pain. I can't bring that loved one back. I can't, have some cute little saying that's all of a sudden going to make them feel good. Grief is a journey. It's like I liken it to, walking across a field where my boots are collecting mud with every step. It just gets heavier and heavier and heavier as I move on until I reach the point where I'm on the other side of it. So the coping process, there is not really a way to short circuit that, but there can be comfort in knowing I love this person well. They knew I loved them well. We said what
Mm.
needed to be said, and there was nothing left on the table. We emptied this as a family. So that's
You
a
must
hard one to
have.
answer.
Yeah, no kidding. Um,
Tammy, we love you.
I
So I
love
hope you
Tammy.
know that.
She's
So,
fantastic. I love
yep,
her.
yep. So the coping and finding peace, that simply takes time as they have to walk out their own individual grief journey.
We have a question here from Renee. What would you suggest to a person whose family doesn't care, regardless how much you try to keep them a part of your life?
Whew.
Uh,
Sounds like there might be a toxic person in this relationship somehow. So um, that's where consistent boundaries come into play. And if people continue to violate those boundaries, I'm going to use distance to just try to, keep them apart and separate from my life. Um, I can't force somebody to do that, but boy, I can let my silence communicate a lot. And when you got toxic family members, those boundaries are hard to implement and hard to maintain. But I'm just kind of looking at the question here. What would you suggest to a person whose family doesn't care, regardless how much you try to keep them out of your life? Um, yeah, those consistent boundaries are really where I'm going to start. Sometimes you have to use no contact orders, unfortunately, when
Yeah.
people aren't going to listen, they're going to blow through that stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to share personal information. I'm not going to put stuff on, Facebook for them to be able to see. I'm going to, just keep that part of my life separate from people that I think are unhealthy for me.
And what do you do in the situation where uh, it's someone that you've always respected? Maybe even it's another for someone like you and I, another faith-based person. Like we respect their faith and we respect them as individuals, maybe even professionals, and they do something that isn't necessarily toxic towards you, but that now all of a sudden you don't align with or you agree with. How do you tackle that professionally? I'm sorry, not professional. I meant the opposite. I'm not talking about you as what would you recommend to someone that comes in and asks that question. I'm asking you specifically as Darren Cox. Oh man, I'm way ahead of you, by the way. How
You
do you
forgot me.
approach that? I mean, this could. We're not talking about a toxic person in our life. We're talking about the neighbor who's just always over and he's yelling and swearing outside, and the kids are around. It's like, oh man. I mean, this is a person that you like and that you respect, and all of a sudden now you kind of don't align. You don't like some of their decisions. How do you still kind of stay close? Do you, that's it? I'm putting a boundary. Do you have a conversation with that person, or do you let it go?
Well, I'm a big believer that, you can show and you can see how much somebody cares about you when it comes time to have a difficult conversation. Do they love you enough to have hard conversations with you? It's easy to say, no, not my business. I'm going to stay out of it. That's on them. But if you genuinely care about somebody and you have that type of relationship, yeah, you're going to look for opportunities to say, hey, wait a minute. I've noticed this. Can I talk to you about this? And poor leadership always is going to double down on poor decisions. So if you get somebody that's defending that when you bring it up, justifying it rather than looking at the implications of how they may have hurt somebody, that conversation is done at that point in time because they're not interested in hearing what you got to say. So I came across a quote years ago that has really guided me with this issue, and it's reasonable people want to be heard, irrational people need to be right, and there's only one of them you can have a conversation with, and I love it. That is just
That's
always stuck in
brilliant.
my head, So I evaluate: are you being reasonable, or is this an irrational person that needs to be right? And if it's they need to be right, conversation's done.
Renee, that's by the way, that's brilliant. Renee had expanded on that, said it's much on jealousy and hoping I fail. So that gives a little more context. So
Yeah.
what
So
would
the
you?
best thing you
Yeah.
can do then in that case is let your life, your peace, your relationships communicate to your family member that you're thriving instead of failing. It's like somebody will come in and say, hey, my in laws don't like me. What do I do? I'm like, well, do you love their daughter? Do you love their son? Are their grandkids well taken care of? Because if you can answer yes, then it doesn't matter if they like you or not
Well,
because
it
you're
does
doing
make
your
Thanksgiving a little easier.
certainly, certainly. No.
You
And
know,
cheaper
yeah. Oh, right. Yeah, yeah. No, that's a
because
good
they
point.
ain't coming.
Hey, so we only have a few minutes left here. I do want to ask you. It's more of, again more of a faith-based thing. Uh, Churches. What do you think the current state of the quote unquote church is? And I'm not talking about Catholicism, evangelical, Protestant churches. They're doing a good job overall, right? Not a specific church or a specific denomination of a evangelical church. How are churches doing right now? Are you happy with where they are?
Um, some yes, some no. Let me qualify this. There's a verse in the book of Timothy that talks about in the last days, people will forgo sound teaching and only want what their tickling ears want to hear. All right, they will not accept sound teaching. So when I talk about sound teaching, what I'm talking about is a church that preaches scripture, a
Mhm.
church that follows a process of where so is it written. Can you back it up with scripture with what it is that you're teaching, what it is that you're saying? In modern evangelicalism, in modern evangelical circles, we see a lot of pastors that their goal is to make somebody feel good. to make somebody, feel adequate or enough. And I get where they're going with that. But if I'm enough, what do I need a savior for? If I'm adequate in myself, what do I need salvation for? So, a solid church is a church that's going to preach the word. And what you're seeing is people that are being drawn to churches that aren't necessarily flashy. There's not, smoke and mirrors and whatever else, but it's just this solid commitment to biblical truth. So those are the two types of churches that I see: ones that are there to entertain and ones that are there to teach scripture. Because scripture is what changes a person's life, changes their mindset, their perspective, gives them hope. There's an interesting YouTube video series out there called The American Gospel that looks at the state of the North American evangelical church. So if anybody ever wants to take a deeper dive into that question that you just asked, that video series is excellent.
I think this is I haven't read it all the way through. I don't know if there's a question from Courtney. Thank you for commenting, Courtney. You can't control others. If someone doesn't have the desire to be part of your life, you can't change your heart. Just live your best life and love them from afar. It's hard when others don't love on you in the way you need. Sorry, it disappears after 15 seconds. And you can expect them. Okay, so I didn't get all the way through. I don't think there's a question, but it's a nice comment. What do you think of that?
I love the statement of love them from afar. And what I tell people is it's pretty hard to hug a porcupine. So,
man, you just have so many of these just wonderful sayings. This is great.
Well, part of doing what I do is you got to figure out ways to help people make sense of what you're trying to say. And whether you attach your intervention to a sledgehammer, which I'm good at, or a bouquet of flowers, which I'm not real good at, the goal is to have people hear you. So, yeah, love them from afar. That's excellent input.
Have you ever lost business or tried to have been canceled because you are a man of faith and you also run a business?
I haven't. I've never had it be that overt. Again, I try not to get preachy with people that don't want to hear it. One of the things my clients have consistently said through the years is, you know what, I talked to you about something that I was embarrassed of, ashamed of, and I didn't feel judged. So I really try to, maintain that approach, and that hasn't happened. If it does, more than likely it's a misunderstanding, because I'm not in this field because I don't care about people. And if somebody's that sideways, more than likely they misunderstood what the intention was. And the hope is they'd come and talk to me.
Yeah.
But, if they don't, there's nothing you can do about it. So
it is what it is.
yeah, exactly.
No, Larry, there isn't. Sorry, buddy. Yeah. Not even Darren could probably help you, man. You're
that was brutal, Ben.
Hey, I told you, I'm a straight shooter.
You're hosed, buddy.
Yeah. No kidding though. We really should start doing this more often because we're already almost at 45 minutes. I'm not kidding. I love learning. I love listening to you. You and I have a friendly relationship outside of doing the show. We chat every once in a while, and you're just an absolute pleasure to talk to. You're just one of the. There's very few people in this world right now, and this is some of the reasons why I was kind of bringing up kind of where the church is right now, and you've talked about kind of where society is right now. I can, at this point, count on probably two hands how many Christians I respect. And that's it. And that's pretty bad. And I know a lot of them.
Yeah.
But this is going to be people aren't going to like this. Christians are hurting Christianity more than agnostics, atheists, Islam, anything else. Christians are just shooting themselves in the foot, and they're making everybody else look bad, and they just don't really, like the Bible's a la carte, right? They just kind of pick and choose what they want to do, and it's like the church today is not the church I remember. We don't even go to church anymore. We do Bible studies here because I get more out of that in a family Bible study for 2 hours than I do for going to church. They aren't talking. I like the Brian Coles, man. Just spit truth, brother. I like that. You are also one of those. My mother's another one of those. There's not that many people that I know that are that way. Are you seeing that too? Or is it just me and I have the wrong friends?
Well, no, this literally last week, I had somebody say to me that as Christians, we're the only people that bury our wounded. And I thought, boy, that's hard to hear, but there's some accuracy to it. So what an unbelieving world finds unbelievable is Christians who don't act like Christians. So I mean, the key word in Christian is Christ.
Right. That's kind of a big giveaway.
So,
There's a root word there,
right.
folks.
And you may have heard this quote before from Gandhi, but somebody asked him why he didn't become a Christian. He said, show me somebody who acts like Christ, and I might think about it. I thought, again, wow.
I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, no, I kind of butchered that quote, but you get the gist of it.
It's a gist of it. I know a lot of people believe in God, but not Christians. And it doesn't mean you're perfect, right? That's the other thing. I mean, I sin, I do, maybe a bad thought, or I have envy, or there's other things. But man, yeah, it's like we're just taken out of. We're like the Christ is no longer in there. The Holy Spirit, that's no longer there, and it would be easier. Look, I really should just be a Catholic, and I'm sorry, it's like I'm banging on Catholics. I mean, how it's just structured. Do this, do this, do this, and when this happens, we do this, and then give me 7 Hail Marys, say you're sorry, do this. It's great. Like, I like that structured list. Tell me, here's what you do, here's the consequence. Everything in there. Kind of find out that's not really how it works. So I struggle with that, because I kind of just want specifics, rules, guidelines, everything. Instead, it's this relationship with Jesus. And that's what over just the last few years I'm starting to have, because I'm in my 40s. I didn't know Jesus Christ. I didn't have a relationship with him until literally 3 years ago. It was always the Bible and God in church, but I didn't actually have a relationship with him. And I'm still learning, because I'd never focused on that stuff before.
Right.
So I was lost. And then I look back and go, that's why I did all those dumb things. So I believed in God. Just, that's where it's at, brother.
Yeah, for sure. Because that's what's life changing. I mean, I think you could probably go back in both our lives and look at us, prior to having that in your life. And you want to talk about a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
That was my life at 20 years old.
Yeah.
So,
Brian, is the return of Christ near? There will be Matthew 20. Yeah, I don't know that one. There will be such an increase of the sin and lawlessness that those. Well, okay, I get where he's going with that.
Well, I hope so. I mean, that is the blessed hope of the Christian, is the return of Christ. So, but
Amen.
I mean, we don't know when that is. We have to live with expectancy, like it could be tomorrow. And how is that going to influence how I live today? You can, So,
yeah, Darren, we need to do this again. No kidding. Before the year is out, let's do this like every 2 months. We should just schedule this in.
Well, I love the questions, so I hope more of that comes, because that's solid. So
great. Yeah, maybe we'll do that next time. We'll actually announce it for just this purpose and just this reason. Doing some of those. Hey, thanks so much, brother.
Yeah, you bet.
All right. Special thank you to our guest today, mental health professional and owner of Anchor Bay Counselling. Kidding, you are a professional. Darren Cox, for blocking out some time to come on for a chat with us. Reminder, if for those of you who are actually watching this live still, I'll be hosting another show in about 15 minutes or so with combat veteran and former member of the U.S. Congress, Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, which is scheduled to go to live, I think around 9:30, 9:40, somewhere in there. We're going to do it. So with that said, for DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden, saying thank you for watching, and as always, have a blessed day.